Welcome to This Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're joining us today because, man, we're going on quite the journey together. We're starting with the massive, honestly, kind of terrifying scale of global environmental breakdown. But hey, don't worry, we're definitely not going to leave you hanging in doom and gloom territory. By the end of this explainer, we're going to zoom all the way down to a triumphant, real-world success story that proves we can absolutely turn things around. If you're new to the concepts of ecology and conservation, you are in the exact right place. We're going to break it all down simply, clearly, and step by step. Okay, let's dive right into this. Here is our mental roadmap for our time together today. 1. The global biodiversity crisis. 2. Humans in the Anthropocene. 3. Why we must care. 4. Strategies for wildlife conservation. And 5. India's conservation and tigers. Section 1. The global biodiversity crisis. Our planet's intricate web of life is unraveling at an absolutely alarming rate. To really wrap our heads around why, it helps to think of the planet as one giant, lively neighborhood. Right now, there are 5 major threats totally disrupting our neighborhood. First up, habitat destruction. That's simply tearing down homes, cutting down forests for farms and cities. Second is climate change, the weather gone wild. We're burning fossil fuels, trapping heat, and making it literally impossible for certain plants and animals to adapt. Third, pollution. We are dirtying our own home with chemicals and plastics. Fourth is overuse, basically taking way too much. Imagine constantly emptying out the shared fridge and not leaving a single bite for anyone else. That's exactly what we're doing with overfishing and overhunting. And finally, invasive species. Think of these as those uninvited, super noisy neighbors who just move in, take over the place, and push all the native residents right out. Let's zoom in on that first threat for a second, because habitat destruction is particularly devastating no matter where you look. On land, deforestation is just wiping out forests that act as vital carbon sinks, those natural systems that literally suck harmful carbon out of the atmosphere for us. But it's happening underwater too. The destruction of coral reefs is a huge, huge concern. These reefs are often called the rainforests of the sea because they are just bursting with life. When we destroy them, we aren't just evicting marine animals. We are actually destroying the natural barriers that protect our own coastlines from massive erosion. It's a real double whammy. Section 2. Humans and the Anthropocene. So, taking a step back to look at the macro view, I want to pose a question directly to you. What exactly is the Anthropocene? You've probably heard scientists or maybe journalists toss this fancy word around, but what does it actually mean for us and for the planet? Well, the definition is surprisingly simple. The Anthropocene is literally just the current time period we're living in right now. But here is the defining feature, and it's a big one. Humans are now the biggest single force changing the planet. We aren't just passengers along for the ride on Earth anymore. Through our agriculture, our sprawling cities, our industries, we are actively reshaping the physical structure of the globe in huge, permanent ways. I absolutely love this vivid metaphor from our sources to explain this. It says, imagine Earth as a giant, incredibly complex puzzle, with each piece representing a different plant or animal. Now, imagine humans, in our modern lifestyle, are like a clumsy giant trying to rearrange the puzzle, but we're breaking a lot of pieces in the process, right? That perfectly captures the sheer scale of modern human interference. We're shuffling all the pieces around, and we're stepping on a lot of them. And the real, measurable cost of all that clumsiness? It's pretty staggering. In nature, there's a baseline called the background extinction rate. That's the slow, completely natural rate at which species disappear without any human interference. But compare that to our current extinction rate. Scientists estimate that our current rate is anywhere from 100 to 1,000 times higher than that natural background rate. Let that sink in for a second. 1,000 times higher. This shocking acceleration is exactly why you'll often hear scientists refer to our current era as the 6th mass extinction. Section 3. Why we must care. Now, it's super easy to look at those massive global statistics and feel a bit disconnected. So let's look at the immediate personal stakes here. The reality is, nature lost isn't just a problem for exotic animals living in distant places. The stakes for us humans are immediate. First off, everything is connected. When one part of an ecosystem breaks, it sends a shockwave through the whole system. Second, we rely entirely on nature for our basic survival. Clean water, food security, breathable air, the whole shebang. Third, our personal health is directly tied to a healthy environment. Losing biodiversity makes our food systems incredibly vulnerable to disease. And finally, on a cultural and ethical level, we're just losing the profound beauty and wonder of the natural world. To sum up this grim reality, the source material offers this really powerful, sobering thought. It's like we are slowly dismantling the life support system of the planet. It really is. Without these interconnected ecosystems, humanity simply cannot thrive. But hey, remember I promised you we wouldn't just stay in the gloom? Now that we understand the stakes, we can actually start looking at the solutions. Section 4. Strategies for Wildlife Conservation. Conservation biology isn't just some dry academic pursuit, not at all. It is a highly practical, mission-oriented crisis discipline dedicated to actually protecting and managing the biodiversity we have left. To keep it simple and beginner-friendly, let's go back to our neighborhood analogy. The strategies scientists use are a lot like just being a good neighbor. First, you protect homes. This means establishing safe zones like national parks, which is essentially like fixing up a rundown house by planting trees or restoring wetlands. Second, you check head counts. Scientists meticulously monitor populations using cameras and trackers to see how the neighborhood is actually doing. And third, you evict uninvited guests. That means removing those invasive species that are causing trouble for the native residents. But how do conservationists know if their strategies are actually working? Well, they use a continuous, data-driven framework called the Conservation Standards Cycle. First, they assess the problem and identify the specific threats. Next, they plan their goals and strategies. Then they implement those plans out in the real world. Step 4 is absolutely crucial. Analyze and adapt. They are constantly monitoring the effectiveness of their actions and tweaking their strategies based on hard data. Finally, they share what they've learned so other global teams can benefit. It's just a relentless, flexible cycle of improvement. Section 5. India's Conservation and Tigers. Let's move to and see how this builds, zooming in from global frameworks to a highly detailed, incredibly successful case study happening right now in India. Every successful conservation effort needs a rock-solid foundation, right? In India, that foundation is the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. This is a comprehensive, cornerstone piece of legislation. It provides the strict legal framework necessary to actually protect nature. It prohibits hunting many animal species, regulates the trade of wildlife products to crack down on illegal trafficking, and most importantly, it gives the government the power to establish highly protected areas where wildlife can just recover in peace. Because of that law, India has built this amazing, diverse network of protection zones. At the very top, you have national parks. These offer the highest level of protection, basically prohibiting almost all human activity. A really famous example is Jim Corbett National Park, which is India's oldest, established way back in 1936. Then there are wildlife sanctuaries, which allow slightly more regulated activities. Next, biosphere reserves, which try to balance conservation with sustainable development, like the Sundarbans, the world's largest contiguous mangrove forest. And finally, you have highly specialized tiger reserves. And those specialized reserves, they exist largely because of Project Tiger. Launched in 1973, this was an absolute landmark initiative. At the time, Bengal tiger populations had been just decimated by habitat loss and rampant poaching. The species was facing imminent extinction. So Project Tiger's core strategy was to establish inviolate core areas, meaning spaces completely free from human disturbance. They set up dedicated staff and anti-poaching patrols to ensure the tigers actually had a safe, natural habitat where they could breed and bounce back. So, the crucial point is, did it work? Notice the massive jump in the population data. In 2018, intensive surveys counted 2,967 tigers. By 2022, just 4 years later, that number had grown to 3,682. This proves that rigorous monitoring, strict legal protection, and dedicated conservation efforts yield real, tangible results. 3,682 Bengal tigers. That isn't just a statistic on a page. That number is a massive symbol of hope and resilience. It proves that even though habitat fragmentation and poaching still remain constant threats that demand our vigilance, we are definitely not helpless. When communities, governments, and scientists all work together using targeted strategies, we can actually reverse the damage of the Anthropocene. We can literally bring a species back from the brink. And that leaves us with an incredibly inspiring thought. If humanity can organize itself to save the mighty Bengal tiger, managing its complex habitats and completely turning its population trajectory around, what other parts of our global neighborhood will we restore next? The tools are there, the cycle of conservation works, and the choice is entirely ours. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope you leave feeling a little more knowledgeable and a whole lot more inspired to protect your own ecological neighborhood. See you next time.